Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is knock. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or ways that we use this verb. The first way you'll hear knock used is to mean to strike a surface noisily in order to attract attention, get someone's attention. As an example of this, right, I have a surface here, right? That's the action. I'm striking the surface using my knuckles again to get someone's attention. Maybe it's to get someone to come and answer a door. A second way you'll hear knock used is to mean to collide with someone or something. And a third way this verb gets used is to mean to criticize something. So many times we hear this in the negative, telling someone not to knock another person or maybe an idea. And so we're trying to get someone maybe to be a little more accepting and not so negative. You should know that knock is a regular verb. To form the progressive, all I need to do is add ing to form knocking. The past tense and participle forms of this verb can be made by adding ed. Our base verb, knock, ends in an unvoiced K sound. So our past tense ending is going to make a T sound. It should sound like this: knocked, knocked. Okay. Now, the verb knock is used in a number of different ways with phrasal verbs. So that's what we're going to focus on discussing today. I have a lot of examples, and I want to note this isn't even all of them that are available. I tried to pick out ones that I feel like I hear or see as I'm reading a little more commonly. So the first we'll discuss is knock around. This can have a couple meanings. One might be to informally discuss an idea. An example of this might be, I've been knocking around the possibility of switching careers. Okay. Here's an example of the present perfect progressive or present perfect continuous. Someone is mentioning that they have been informally discussing this idea of having a new profession. Okay? This is just a practice sentence. This is not true for me. A second way you'll hear knock around used is to mean to either jolt something or jostle it or even strike it. So an example of this might be, don't knock around this fragile box. Okay, so for whatever reason, this item could easily break. So we're telling someone, don't jostle it, don't strike it, don't do something that's could cause it to break. Another phrasal verb you might hear is to knock against. This just means we're causing something to bump into or collide with something else. An example of this, she knocked her suitcase against another passenger. Okay, so maybe as she's boarding the plane, this particular action occurs. The suitcase bumps into another person. And I should mention this sentence, she knocked her suitcase against, is an example of the affirmative simple past tense. And I think I forgot to say, don't knock around is the imperative, it's a negative command. The next phrasal verb we'll discuss is to knock back. This can have a few different meanings. One would be to refer to drinking alcohol, a really informal way to say that. An example of this, they didn't knock back many drinks. Okay, here's an example of the negative simple past tense. Another way you'll hear knock back used is to refer to how much money something is costing a person. An example of this, how much is this repair going to knock me back? Okay, so maybe someone's having an automobile repair. They're having something fixed on their car. They're asking this question in the simple future tense. This is a be going to. They're trying to kind of make a plan for maybe how much money they need to have, or maybe how they'll have to change some of their spending to afford this repair. The next phrasal verb we'll discuss is knock down. This can have a couple different meanings. One might be to mean causing something to topple over or fall over. An example of this: the toddler always knocks down his siblings' building blocks. Okay, so here you might think of this as kind of pushing something over, causing it to fall. This is an example of the simple present. I'm describing a habit or a routine. A second way we can use knock down is to mean to reduce or decrease something. An example of this: can you knock down this price? Okay, so here I'm asking someone to reduce the price. Maybe we're at a garage sale, a yard sale. That's where, at least in the United States, a lot of negotiating tends to happen. And so I'm asking the person to reduce the price. This sentence here, can you knock down the price? It's a question, really, could be a little bit of permission or ability. Are you able to decrease this price? The next phrasal verb we'll discuss is knock in. Many times we use this again to mean we're bumping or striking something or maybe causing something to enter a particular place. An example of this: did she knock the ball in? You might hear this phrase used in the sport of soccer or football. Sometimes, as there are many players close to the goal, just being in the right sort of spot where you can kind of quickly get the ball to enter the goal. That's really what we're asking here. Did they sort of hit or strike the ball in a way that caused a goal to be scored? Let's keep discussing some more phrasal verbs. The next we'll discuss is to knock into. You'll hear this used again to mean to bump or collide. Here's an example of that: I spilled my drink when someone knocked into me. This is another example of the simple past tense. Another phrasal verb you'll hear is knock off. This phrasal verb gets used in a number of different ways. We're going to discuss 5 different ways. The first is meaning that we are causing something to fall. An example of this: be careful, you're going to knock the vase off the counter. Okay. Here's another simple future using be going to. We're telling someone's actions are going to lead to this particular consequence. A second way you hear knock off used is to mean to illegally copy something. It might also be used to mean that something's being imitated. An example of this: he knocks off designer shoes. So, might be describing someone's business here, their routine of copying sort of famous designer shoes and trying to sell them for a reduced price, but still make a significant amount of money. Our third way to use knock off is to mean to rob a location. You might think of rob like steal, right? An example of this: someone is knocking off gas stations. Okay? So here's an example of present progressive or present continuous. We might be describing an action that sort of continues. Each night, a particular gas station is robbed. The fourth way we can use knock off is a bit similar to knock down. Here we're referring to reducing a price. An example of this: if you knock off $100, I'll buy it. This is an example of the conditional, right? I've got an if there, and many times as I use that conditional, I'm using the simple present, and then the second part of my sentence is using the simple future. The last way you'll hear knock off used is to mean to defeat. An example of this in a question: who knocked off Serena at Wimbledon? Okay, it's a pretty famous and large tennis tournament occurring in England right now. And Serena Williams, one of the most well-known and some might argue the greatest player to have played the game, was defeated in the first round. Right? So you might have heard that used in that way. The next phrasal verb we'll discuss is knock on. This can have a couple different meanings. One might be to strike something sharply or swiftly. An example of this: who is knocking on the door? Here I've got another question. This one is in the present progressive. A second way to use knock on is to refer to bumping into something and causing something or someone maybe to fall or causing something to fall down. An example of this: I knocked a lamp on the floor while I was trying to navigate in the dark. Maybe this has happened to you if you're walking around a place that's a bit unfamiliar to you at night when the lights are out, can't really see, so you might bump into something and cause that thing to fall. This is another simple past tense example. You might not believe this, but I have even more phrasal verbs to discuss. The next one we're going to talk about is knock out. This can have a number of different meanings. We're going to discuss 6. The first way you'll hear knock out used is to mean to cause someone to become unconscious. Right? So they're not awake, they're not alert. An example of this, you might hear it in the sport of boxing. The boxer knocked out his opponent. Another simple past tense sentence here. A second way you'll hear knock out used is to mean to exhaust someone. So someone is becoming very, very tired. An example of this: will this medicine knock me out? Okay. This is a pretty informal way to ask if a medicine's going to make you drowsy or make you want to fall asleep. This is a simple future question. A third way for us to use knock out is to mean to impress or excite someone. You might hear someone say something like, that movie knocked me out. They found it very impressive. They enjoyed it. Many times people would think of this as being kind of a compliment. Our fourth way to use knockout could mean that something is no longer working, that it has stopped operating. An example of this: did the storm knock out power? Maybe this has happened to you. A really bad thunderstorm, maybe, or a windstorm of some kind leads to the power no longer working, no longer operating. This question, did the storm knock out power, is a yes or no question in the simple past tense. Our last way to use, or sorry, this is only the fifth way, my apologies. The fifth way to use knockout, you'll hear it used to mean that a team or an individual has been eliminated from some type of competition. An example of this: the U.S. knocked out France in the 2019 Women's World Cup. Another simple past tense sentence. Our final way to use knockout is to refer to completing something. An example of this: I'm going to knock out this project today. Right? It means I'm going to finish it. I'm going to complete it. Here's another simple future sentence using be going to. Our last phrasal verb with knock here is to knock over. Many times we're using this to refer to something being pushed or shoved. An example sentence: the crazed shoppers knocked a man over. Right? So pushed him. And this, used in this way, we would also likely think it led to the man falling down as well. Now let's spend just a moment looking at a word and some phrases related to knock. Again, there are so many different phrases and idioms you'll hear with knock. This is not a full list. I tried to pick things that I thought my students might hear or see as they read. The first word we're going to discuss is just the noun form of this word, knock. So same spelling, same pronunciation. When we use the word knock as a noun, we might be referring to a sudden sound that could be rather short, and again, it's caused by a blow or by someone striking something. An example of this: did you give the door a knock? So here we're asking in sort of a different way, but did you knock on the door, right? My example there, that's knock is a verb. A knock tells us this is a noun. A second way you'll hear this noun used is just to refer to sort of any blow or collision. An example of this: this phone case can withstand most knocks. Okay, so people dropping it, maybe running into, colliding with something, right? It's not going to break the foam. Or this case, I guess, is going to protect it from any damage. A third way you'll hear the noun knock used is to refer to a discouraging experience. An example of this: the company suffered many knocks during the last 2 years. Okay. I think many companies could probably identify this. The pandemic might have altered their ability to do business or the way they have done business. Other world events could have also led to some negative experiences. The fourth way you could use the noun knock is to mean to make a critical comment. So this last definition ties back to that third definition of the verb we discussed earlier, meaning to criticize. How you might hear this used: this isn't a knock. Right? So here someone's trying to say, I'm not making a critical comment, but I preferred the restaurant we ate at last week. Okay, so maybe we've just dined somewhere, and someone's not trying, maybe not to criticize the current one, but offering that they preferred or liked more the one from the previous week. One of the phrases I thought you might hear could be to knock someone for a loop. What this means is someone is really amazed. They're dumbfounded, maybe shocked, even very surprised. So, an example sentence might be: their big news has knocked everyone for a loop. So everyone who hears this news, they're stunned. They're amazed. Another phrase you might hear would be to knock on wood. Many people will say this, and they might actually try and find something made from wood in order to do that action, like I've done before here, right? And they're doing it. Some might say for good luck, or others might say they're doing it in order to keep bad luck away. But this general idea is a bit the same. So I actually had a friend say this recently to me. This friend has been traveling a lot. We know there's been a lot of travel problems, especially here in the United States. Lots of cancellations, lots of delays. And what she said to me was, knock on wood, our airline travel has been going really smoothly. Okay, so she's hoping she doesn't give herself bad luck by saying this. But so far, so good for them and their trips. The last phrase we'll discuss today is don't knock it until you've tried it. So this is an imperative. It's set as a command. And what we're trying to do is encourage someone to try something before they criticize it, before they get really negative about it. So I feel like I heard this quite a lot in relation to food as I was growing up. I think my brother and I many times were a little hesitant to try new things. So you might hear something like, this might not sound tasty, but don't knock it until you've tried it, right? You can't criticize this until you've actually eaten a bit of it. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.